to, oh, there we go. So I had the opportunity along with the others to just sit in and be part of the rich conversations that you're having. And I'm really, really grateful to get to bear witness to that. And so we have about 8 to 10 minutes right now to hear from some of you. And obviously we can't hear from everyone or even every group, but if some of you could really think to yourself about something that you feel like would be really pithy from a theme that your group was really grappling with. I'm imagining that you went into some different places. So we'd love to hear some good pithy shares that you feel like that they're really for the whole group, and not necessarily just for you to keep contemplating in your journal, which please do. But think about if you feel like you've got something that could really help enrich the whole conversation, and we'll hear from as many of you as we can in the next 8 to 10 minutes. And to let me know that you're interested in sharing, use in the reaction section there, use the raise hand button, and I'll call on you. All right, Victor, thank you. I'm going to start with you. I saw your hand first.
I think our group had a discussion of what tending was, that it was a very broad term. And we looked at the different aspects of tending. What does tending look like in an urban setting? What does tending look like more in a rural setting? So there was some discussion about a definition of that. Is tending always agrarian, or does tending mean providing housing in an area that is suffering from homelessness, or does tending mean, converting your space to some sort of, organic farm that feeds people who are hungry and suffering? So that was, I think, a theme. I'm not being very clear about it, but that was a theme I think sort of rang in our group discussion.
Thank you so much. Such a really important layers of distinction there. Thank you, Victor. Tanya? Or I'm sorry if I mispronounced your name.
That's okay. It's Tamaya.
Tamaya.
But yeah, thank you. Our group, one of the kind of common themes that we kept coming back around to with the trust question was sort of, in an ideal world, you wish that putting your trust into the individuals or communities that are tending to the land would be enough, and isn't like a naive way to view it. But the reality is that the institutions that we're governed by, whether we trust them or not, do have a lot of determinations on, the food we eat, the products we have, the access we have to those things, food deserts, whether your neighborhood has a farmer's market, or, all of those different kind of factors. And so that's kind of one thing we kept coming back to, where the individuals who are involved, we do trust them and they do deserve to have more of a voice, but the reality of the institutions doesn't allow for that to really be safe for a lot of people.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. And that, yeah, I got to be in your group, so that I heard that question of, it's harder to know who to trust, and you would love to put your trust in the people, but the institutions often get in the way. Thank you, Tamaya. Carol.
This is was from my own sharing in our group, but it speaks directly to what Victor brought up. And in my area and the land I was thinking about, another kind of tending over the centuries has been through ceremony and prayer by Indigenous people. Mm-hmm. And sometimes that has been interrupted further east, probably by removal and physical genocide, and out here by removal to reservations and restrictions on Indigenous spirituality that are not all that long gone.
Yeah. Thank you so much. We'll get to hear a little bit about that later too from L. Frank. I really appreciate you bringing that, tending through ceremony. Sister Beatrice?
In our group, we all kind of felt that communities of people are more apt to make wise decisions regarding land than individuals, just because of the breadth and depth of the vision that can be brought to the table. So given that communities can make better decisions because of the variety of input, we felt that to create that kind of community that can be at the table together involves building trust. And Tamaya mentioned the problems with trust. And I think that was what we were saying too, that we need to be willing to take the time and the effort to build trust among the people who have something to offer at the table, so that we can all listen with open-heartedness and benefit from one another's wisdom.
Thank you so much for that. And yeah, it's kind of mic drop on all your shares here. It's really, really important and beautiful. Is there, the folks who are tracking time, how much more time do we have for other shares and other sisters who would like to share some reflections?
We have about 3 minutes left, so one or two shares, depending on length of time.
Thank you, Jason. There's someone who's
I'll add sisters or co-members, associates, folks working with sisters. That, yeah.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Someone's heart beating. You got a burner that would be an offering for all of us right now? All right. Thank you, Jessie.
Yeah, just one thing that we've tried to do with one part of our land in particular with our nature preserve cemetery is that in our tending, we've asked, like, how can we step back and how can we promote these natural processes that where land is in balance and all species are coming together to tend this area and to keep that balance in play. And so a real part of our tending has been how can we remove ourselves a little bit from this space in order to keep the balance.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Tending as also wisely stepping back. Thank you. Anne?
We talked about how important relationship is, and that whether that is a community's relationship or an indigenous community's relationship, but that there is actually a connection to the land. But we also talked about how our Western ideas about land usage are very well integrated into us, and how we really have to question those and be aware of those when we are thinking about decision making, and being aware that we need to broaden our way of thinking and recognizing that our way isn't always the best way.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. I hear the past two shares as sort of wisely discerning that tending is sometimes also is stepping back and not continuing to think we know what to do to make something happen. So thank you so much for all of your shares, and really the complexity of the systems that we're facing, and that we have the opportunity to influence are all right, hopefully starting to get fleshed up, so that this next part of our training got some really good, we're stirred up, and we've got some good things stewing that we can bring to bear. I believe, Jason, do you want to?
Yeah, we're gonna jump in just to a 5-minute bio break if you need to use the
Okay.
restroom or drink some water or something like that. So we'll be back in just about 5 minutes. So we'll see you very soon again. All right, everyone, welcome back. So as we move forward, we're now handing the mic over to Abby.
Hi, everyone. It's been such a beautiful morning so far. This portion of our training, we're going to talk a little bit about sovereignty and expanding just our embodied understanding of what sovereignty is. So to me, it feels like we can understand something mentally, but the real understanding comes for all of us when we begin to embody, when it becomes part of who we are and part of our nature. If Jason, you could start sharing screen, that would be great. So in this part of our time together, we are not going to be working with the word sovereignty in this way as a political concept that refers to dominant power or supreme authority. If we were to look in the dictionary, the word sovereignty is, the root of the word sovereignty really comes from a very colonial perspective. But we will be using and working with the word sovereignty that refers to our ability to have full authority of making decisions and shaping our own lives. Here, sovereignty is often used to describe the human right of Black and Indigenous folks, tribes, being the supreme authority of itself, oneself. So as we are culture shifting, there are so many of us who have really begun to examine language, the roots of the words that we use, and we're beginning to expand the definitions of these words. So I apologize for the sounds in the background if you can hear the cars. But go ahead and next slide, please. So this is one of my favorite quotes by an Aboriginal elder that says, "Healing gives us back to ourselves, not to hide or fight anymore, but to sit still, calm our minds, listen to the universe, and allow our spirits to dance on the wind and drift into our dream time. Healing ultimately gives us back to our country, to stand once again in our rightful place, eternal and generational. Healing is not just about recovering what has been lost or repairing what has been broken. It is about embracing our life force to create a new and vibrant fabric that keeps us grounded and connected." And I love this quote because as many communities are working to regain sovereignty, there's part of it that we're having to look at our trauma. We're having to look at what's been broken and the roots and the history of why things have been broken. But the flip side and creating a complete spectrum is to also look at what is whole, what is here, what is together, and what is strong. And so I love this quote because it really, to me, speaks the whole spectrum of healing and sovereignty. So we are going to talk a little bit about the tenets of healing and of sovereignty. And so many, many, many traditions around the world and their medicine people always speak of wellness and wholeness as meaning not just, oh, we're great, we're, we have, we're okay, but a total wellness and a total wellness looks like a connection to land and place, to ancestral cultural lands, connection to spirit and creator, connection to our ancestors, connection to community, family, and tradition. And like it was said earlier, an ability to, hold traditional ceremonies, to be able to pray in their way, to tend land in a particular way. And a connection to an individual's connection to themselves and their purpose in relationship to all of those things above. And I will drop that in the chat when I get a chance, the quote. So we understand that the impacts of systemically dismantling the sovereignty of individuals has been really strong. Ancestral and generational trauma looks like many, many things. And so we have a lot of it listed out, but one that really sticks out to me is like post-traumatic slave syndrome. And I feel it's a theory put out by a psychology doctor named Dr. Joyce DeGruy, who talks about really conditioned tendencies and safety mechanisms that were put in place by enslaved folks, Africans that were brought over in the Middle Passage, who, there would be a situation on the plantation, the plantation master is walking by and a mother is there with her son, and she says, the slave master says to the mother, wow, he's looking really good, he's looking really, strong. And she's like, no, he's stupid, he's this, he's that. And really putting her son down as a protective mechanism, which in turn turns into, what we may see in many different communities as lateral violence, as this way of, it's a safety shape that had been taken on literally to protect, people's children from the world itself, having to take on, different echoes of the abuser. Cognitive dissonance is something else that really stands out to me that I see a lot in communities that I work with, which really echoes, one's internal feelings not matching the world and the world not matching what's happening inside. So we can have folks who want to believe that they could be anything, but the world is telling them something different, creating a lot of different psychological, emotional, spiritual disharmonies that, unfortunately are held with a lot of us, in particular people of color. And as a Black person myself, I can speak to that as, my own work of working to heal my own anti-Blackness, the ways that I was raised and the things that I was taught about Black folks being embedded into me and me needing to really heal those things. So all of these things. So we know that the impact of genocides and enslavement and so many things have just created so much trauma. At the same time, next slide, please. We know that we can always return to the tenets of healing. Some of the work that I've done in the world is bringing, in particular, working with young folks of color and bringing them back to the land. And, the land has always been a place where a deep reclamation happens and a deep ancestral pride happens, where we can imagine ourselves as more than what society has told us that we are, and where they can also just kind of awaken their ancestral beauty and kind of, work against what society has reflected back to them as folks of color, as Indigenous folks, as Black folks. It's very, very powerful, powerful work. So the tenets of healing and the tenets of sovereignty are not just these old ideas, these things that are held in the past, but these tenets of healing are actually keys to bringing us into the future in a good way, reconnecting people to land, reconnecting people to their ancestral heritage, and being able to rework history and be like, wow, my people were incredible medicine people. They knew the plants, they knew the land, they built incredible structures, they were scientists, all of these beautiful things. Reweaving into a sense of community and family and healing those bonds, as well as, reinvigorating purpose through community and through family and through being able to heal together. It is so clear that if we are disconnected to land, earth, nature, our ancestral heritage, and the beauty of our ancestral heritage, that we are deeply impacted. And what we see is these experiences of living out of diaspora as isolating, and slowly by slowly there are places and people reweaving and reconnecting people back to land. And so I really want to thank each of you for being here, for being part of what is happening here. So the real work of being able to not only honor the sovereignty of others, but even reclaiming our own sovereignty and the places where we were embedded with ideas and things that really aren't in alignment with who we are, with our values, truly begins with ourselves and our ability to look look at things that are very difficult to look at, to be truthful with ourselves. And we also want to be able to live in our full integrity in our presence, and that takes so much work. We want to be the embodiment of our values, and again, that's work. And we want to be able to approach each moment with humility and openness, self-awareness, and a clear understanding of our own intentions, with essentially the baggage that we come with and need to work on. We need to know what's in those things. So we are going to move into a writing prompt. At this time, we're just going to take a few minutes. So if you want to get your journals ready or your workbooks ready, it would be great to be able to name the places in your life that you are regaining your own sovereignty as an individual, in terms of things instilled in you as a child. What are some of the belief systems and ideas you took on or inherited that no longer serve you? So let's go ahead and how many minutes do we have for this, Jason? About 10 minutes, I believe, to focus on this and feel into.
We actually only have about five or six
Okay.
minutes.
Okay,
Sorry.
5 or 6 minutes here. So yeah, this is an invitation to start journaling. maybe we can actually cut that down to about 4 minutes and then ask a couple people to share if they feel like sharing. I would love that. Okay, I'm gonna give everyone 1 more minute for the journal writing, and then we'll return to the gallery view. So in doing our best to reclaim our sovereignty and honor the sovereignty of others, we're really healing our own hearts and healing the colonial wounds. When we were looking at, our big list of the isms and, all the wounding that the dismantling of sovereignty has caused, when we look at racism and all the phobias and all those things, those are also illnesses and kind of the ailments of colonialism, right? So there's those who are impacted physically, emotionally, literally had their land and their peoples taken away. And then there's like the sickness of, holding some of these old belief systems, right? So all of us are needing this healing, this time to deeply reflect on our history and where we hope to bring the future. And it seems like the tenets of healing is a good start. So I would like to open it up to one or two of you to share reflections from your journal writing. You can go ahead and use the raise hand feature if you feel like you'd like to share. Sally.
Thank you. I'll share. I'm a child who was raised Catholic with a very Catholic manifest destiny history book. And I became a teacher. And then I became a lawyer. And one of the big ways I'm regaining sovereignty is questioning everything. I questioned it throughout, was told I should have a more faithful mind, not question everything. They really tried hard. Didn't always succeed, but I have come to realize in the last few years that there are really embedded points of view. I had an opportunity at one point in my teaching, someone spoke to the whole Columbus Day, and I could have made a real difference. I'm healing and growing and taking my own, doing my research so that my perspective as a lawyer and an educator and a leader are not informed by other people's narratives. That's the biggest thing for me.
Thank you so much. Whew, it's the work.
Thank you. And thank you for this opportunity and for your words. Really appreciate it.
We have time for one more short share if anyone feels called. Okay, I see Barbara.
So I'm going to say it from where I deserve whatever I can claim or use or grab. That's what I've been asked and been invited to be healed from. I have a sense that, or I was raised with the sense that the space I occupy is mine, and therefore I deserve it and I can use it however I so desire, whatever deems to suit me. And I'm being invited into a more open-handed, open-hearted way to relate to the human and non-human life around me.
That just gave me the chills and brought tears to my eyes because, yeah, that was very powerful. Thank you for that share. Thank you, everyone.
All right, thank you so much, Abby. I find that I have to do so much breathing. Breathing into everything is one of my practices. I'm very grateful to get to be here with everyone. Really appreciate what you just presented, Abby. And we're going to jump over now to Cass, who's going to share some stories.
All right. Oh, goodness. This is all such a process, and I'm really moved. I'm getting to work with Abby, but I get to learn more and receive the blessing of your teachings today, Abby. Thank you so much. Just such a continual process. In order to do this training in a way that we felt was really rooted, we spent hours with each of the folks that you see on the screen here. L. Frank Manriquez, who's a Tongva and Achaman elder. She's an incredible artist, scholar, activist, and language advocate, and has become a friend of mine. I feel very blessed to say. So we spent hours with L. Frank, with Lael Camargo, who is a descendant of the Yaqui and Mayo tribes and a co-founder of Shelterwood, which has come up in one of the other presentations that I've done with you all. And also through the journey of Shelterwood, has become a friend. And then Redbird Willie, who is another local friend. So basically I got to turn to people who through land journeys and learning how to just really join together in solidarity, friends of mine, but we spent a different kind of time with them. So Redbird is a multiple California tribes, Pomo, Wintu, Paiute, and Wailaki, and he's the earth keeper at Heron Shadow, which is where he is an ecologist, an artist, an educator, and Heron Shadow is native land near to me. So Jason and Abby and I got to just really drop in and hear stories from these folks. They were super generous with their time and their insight and willingness to be folks who are on the big journey and know that it's a big project. So they're like, okay, great, let's learn together and let's talk about white people and Indigenous people and our relationships. So Elle Frank, the book that she wrote, there's the First Families book. Her tribes are down in the LA area. She made this art piece. She does incredible artwork. And I thought that it was really beautiful just to even think of all of us as coyotes, you know, and even the sisters and our coyotes in her art piece, and just the evocativeness. And Elle Frank is very evocative. She says, I still know the center of our universe, and people just see it as lots of real estate. And so they don't understand why we're standing here crying. We stand from the side and pray and steward as we can, which goes back to what one of y'all said, I think, Carol, that Elle Frank says they're still tending the land in LA. There's millions and millions of people living there, and they're still tending the land and that urban environment by praying, by finding places to hold their ceremony and continuing to pray, but they're nearly extinct. And so there's multiple processes underway in Los Angeles to understand what native sovereignty can look like in an urban environment like that. All right. Oh, I love that, Abby, reminding us to breathe. It's going to get a little bit more, yeah, I'll try to slow down too, because there's more, we're going to get to hear their voices, and they're very direct. So just really opening our hearts to that. Here are some beautiful folks up at Shelterwood, and Lyle says, land projects are our salvation. And for a lot of us, we want that because we know how healing and liberating it is for us to be here. And a reminder to those of you, and new news to those of you who this is the first time in this space, Shelterwood Collective did go through a real estate process and acquired 900 acres from the United Church of Christ. And so they had a very direct experience with a church entity that unfortunately didn't go as well as we would love to support any land transitions that you might be involved with. So it's one of those that we get to learn a lot from about what not to do. And Lael was very direct in letting us know. So we get to learn from her, from them. And next slide. And so Redbird is, this is the land, this photo here at Heron Shadow, near to me in Sebastopol. We were taught all of our lives not to dream big, and that's part of our trauma. It was like we weren't allowed to. And now we have to train ourselves to think of even bigger dreams than we could have, than we have. Let's turn this whole county into Heron Shadow, he says. That's our big dream now. And so the Heron Shadow is held by an organization called the Cultural Conservancy. The title is held, and that is a multicultural Native conservancy, cultural conservancy. And so it kind of goes back to themes that have already been brought up today about how do people come together, and Heron Shadow has a long history of working with white folks, with unsettlers, as Redbird calls us, and because there's so much unsettling that happened as a result of the settlers, and so we've got the story of Heron Shadow is that a woman wanted to give the land to the Native community. However, she kept tossing and turning on it and kind of going back and forth with what her terms were, until it was finally revealed that she couldn't, that it would hurt her to actually give the land fully. And so the director of the Cultural Conservancy and all of their values was, we can't have this hurt you, so we need to buy this land from you. And so it took 5 years for the conversations to work out, but they eventually bought it at half of what the market would have deemed the land valuable. But they weren't willing to buy the land from, or to receive the land and have it hurt her, because they were so wanting to live into their values of, interestingly enough, that after all that they've been through, they wanted to make sure that it was good for everybody. They needed it to be good for everyone. So we're going to go into a sort of a series of themes that came through our interviews. And I do want to express, each of those folks has an absolute willingness to work with white people. And we got some of the inside perspective, which is so valuable and so important and such an honor to get to hear. And so we took some themes because you can imagine hours and hours of hearing from these folks. We took some themes and I tried to essentialize some of the messages on connection with the land. Frank says the land is doing something. It's enough what it's doing. We just want the land to be okay for itself. So this theme that we've already touched today of tending is just letting the land be. Lyle says, we believe that in order to heal the people, you need to heal the land, and you can't heal the land without healing the people. So Shelterwood really bringing this where the land and the healing of the land and the people is a concurrent process. They also said, we have made it a point to just hold the land as its own entity, as its own individual who must be consulted with. And we try to be in an active relationship and who we communicate with. So they spend time in this remembering how to listen to the land and have the land have its sovereignty. Redbird says, if you want to just go sit under a tree, you know that you can do that your whole time here too. That's what this place is for people to come here and feel safe. They have so much programming at Hair and Shadow. So many people come there and do so much incredible gathering and work. And yet they hold it, that their decolonial practice is that if you need to just go lay in the hammock or you need to just rest, that is 100% what you should do as a Native person, especially coming into Native land, that you would just want to rest. And Redbird said so many people just, that's exactly what they need to do. Oh, okay. I'm sorry, I got distracted because Redbird also said a lot on trauma. So it's on the next slide, hopefully. There we go, thank you. L. Frank says, everybody needs to listen. And what you're going to hear is a lot of confused people, especially in my homelands. We are in a state of chaos, and people need to hear that and understand that it's not our fault, that we Indians need to hear, but it's not our fault. Frank says, we don't want others to feel guilty. We just want them to feel this reality, that the amount of stress most natives are under is enormous. We live in occupied territory. There is no way that we can ever relax. So imagine being Native in Los Angeles and the incredible amount of occupation and the confusion and the attempts to getting organized that the folks there are going through. L. Frank actually had even harder words to say about that. What you're doing when you're listening is you're hearing colonialism. You're hearing the impact of the actions of our ancestors. That's what you're hearing in that confusion, and in sometimes even that what was on your list, Abby, is lateral violence. You know what can happen when people have had their sovereignty so disrupted. So much to say on trauma, such an important lens. Redbird says trauma is such a strong force in this whole conversation. And it's affecting things, a lot of things in odd ways coming from all directions. It's like a magnet. a really strong magnet that's warping the reality of anything that comes near it. We always have to be aware of that. Redbird said that maybe even talking to a nun might be hard. A lot of natives would just freeze up and say no, because deep down inside there's a 7th generation trauma that's going to be there about nuns. And he said, say sometimes 7 generations for it to go away. Now Redbird said, oh, these nuns, yeah, I would talk to them because they're learning, they're open. But he was honest, I think. Certainly the habit or the recognition of a nun coming into the room that for some natives would just be a non-starter. And to just, Elle Frank said at another point, she said, you need to think about what the Catholic Church means to us. And that's having a trauma-informed perspective. And it's so beautiful. That's why we're in this training. That's why we're doing this work. So breathing deep and yeah, just taking it in. So I'm working with title holders with land back process that they recently went through in Tongbangar, which is what is called Los Angeles. This landowner, she wants to know why she doesn't have a say in what happens to the land. Frank says, we didn't have a say when she owned it. Such a reality check about that sort of need for lingering say. Frank says it's just quite common that when there's an exchange, the strings are like chains. Strings attached sometimes feel like chains. Lyle says at the end of the day, you could commit to so much, but if you don't actually put it down on paper and take the steps to getting it done, then it doesn't matter. So intent only goes so far until you actually get it down. And like that 5-year process at Heron Shadow, Redbird says she kept changing her mind. She would keep putting conditions on how the transfer would take place. She wanted to give it away, but in giving it away to us, she was going to hurt herself. She needed what she needed for her own livelihood to continue in a good way. We had to do it in a way that was going to be sustainable. So they said, we're going to buy it from you at a discounted price. And it took 5 years of negotiations for that to happen. And one of our conditions was always no strings attached. So taking the time to build the safety. And I do want to say, though, before we go to the next slide, that each of these folks, each of them talked about the past title holders coming back, wanting them to feel. Redbird said, I want her to come back. I want her to feel the joy of what she's done. Elle Frank said, the past title holders, she could stay in relationship if she didn't keep wanting to have so much control. They could have such a beautiful, flourishing relationship, but only without those chains coming. And Lael said the same thing. They would have been so happy to have more ongoing relationship with the United Church of Christ, but unfortunately, the land transition itself and the conditions didn't allow for the space that they needed to show up into the relationship in a way that worked for them and for their sovereignty. And so in land transitions where we really want more healing and an ongoing relationship, and I'm sure many of you have stories about this yourselves. You're involved in this and you have teachings that you could share with us about what's worked and hasn't worked in the way that you're already sharing your land. All right, or I should say the land. On paperwork and legal entities, Lyle says, I think if it was holistic, the humans would have as much time to adjust as the land. So I feel like grace, more transparency, realizing we're going through a process that's already really hard. People of color need to get good about creating documents and contracts and legal abiding clear language. And that's something that's really intimidating for a lot of us and a barrier in and of itself. Frank says, if title holders need to give land to a nonprofit and BIPOC folks don't have one, then they should just say, here's what you need to make your nonprofit. Frank kept let me know. She says, don't ask people if they're hungry, just show up with food. So this idea that like to really understand that it's not, I kept saying in our interview with Elle, so what do you need? You know, the gesturing as the title holder, what do you need to the BIPOC folks? And Elle Frank kept schooling me, no, you don't ask what they need. You know what they need. They need the land. They need support to hold the land. Like you say, here. And because it's that contemplation of what the precognition that we're doing that's trauma informed before we get to the relationship, that has really thought through the experience of generations of as much as we can grapple. And I don't know if we do we get the Elle Frank quote here, I'm realizing, about the genocide. Let's see if that's coming. I'll make sure to share that. But just that we have to chip away at this, but we do need to wrap our minds around it. We do need to approach the relationship with obviously having done so much pre conditioning, which we're doing now. So I'm just so honored to be part of this this effort. Do we have? Oh, here we go. Elle Frank says, you have to say it first, and this is on relation with white folks. You have to say it first. This is yours, and I know it. So that's part of that pre-thinking. And she said, genocide is too big a handle if your peoples weren't the ones who went through it. It's too big. So you have to chip at the edges. There's something that happens when people who think about the lack of care, people who do care, think about the lack of care. And so that's what we're doing. We're chipping at the edges of something that is incomprehensible. We're bringing our care and we're thinking about the lack of care that has preceded us. Lael says, we were so used to jumping through hoops just to appease white people in order to get what we want. So we did the dance that they wanted us to do. We performed a level of whiteness in order to give them comfort in moving forward. And I feel like that's not anything unusual for people of color to do on the day-to-day. You're taking that in, performing a level of whiteness on the day-to-day, and what that takes for us as white people to really take in, attempt to take in what that might be like. Redbird says it's hard because the unsettlers, that's what I call them, not the settlers, the unsettlers. The unsettlers are so intertwined and, stuck here with us. So it has to be done with that in mind too. And Redbird is one who's committed to working with white folks and committed to working with the fact that we are all stuck here together. And so where do we go from here? And that's what we get to be with in this training, taking all this in. And now I need to take a deep breath after reading all this. Oh, this is powerful to have all of these direct quotes coming from these people who, with their lived experience, these friends that we stand in solidarity with. These friends who their journey isn't their journey, and then we are over here like trying to help them. Their journey is our journey in the sense that we all are in this together. I know that we're on this call because I got the message that I need to wrap up. Thank you. We're breathing deep, and I just, it's an ongoing journey of humility to understand what true solidarity means, and to know that that this is not the world that any of us want to live in. And so together we're recreating new pathways. Such an honor to be in here, and I could go on and on, but I'm gonna pause and acknowledge that we need to put a wrap and make a transition.
We do actually have some time right now just for some landing after all of what was just presented. So I do want to invite people just to be for a couple of minutes with the things that were shared of these three fabulous humans that we got a chance to sit with, and reflect on what was said that really struck you and what you're taking away from it. Take some time for that. And if you feel like writing something down about that, I invite you to do so.
Maybe we can take a moment to invite anyone who feels like they want to share before we end. Maybe 1 or 2 quick shares from Cassandra's piece.
I'll go. This is Annette, and Lyell's quote, I wrote that one down. And there are days at the end of the day, I am very tired from dancing. And so I go outside the yard and fiddle or something. But yeah, there are days when I'm very tired.
I can imagine. Only imagine.
And I can relate.
Especially a lot of
What was that, Annette?
Especially living in South Carolina with everything we have to do and just justice related issues. And I'm very tired.
Thanks for being here. Thanks for sharing that. Victor?
My comments are sort of along the same of Annette. It is exhausting to keep explaining to white people and to have to navigate their fragility, to the one that stood out to me, performing a level of whiteness to get through the day, which is that whole concept of code switching. In order to make white folks feel comfortable, we have to continue to explain the systems which bind us as, I consider myself Native Black, the systems that bind us, and to navigate that constantly, to explain and to explain, and how difficult it is for them to, some people speak their privilege, but they don't really understand how their privilege impacts others. So it is exhausting, particularly in the church that I'm the president of, because 95% of them are white. And so it's always an education in terms of how you speak to us, how you I chair board meetings and things like that, how there's this constant desire for white people to take back power, how they don't understand how they need to share power, and how control is just a part of their style. It's almost like the privilege. They just continue to exert control over the governance of things. So it is exhausting. And when I hear those deep breaths being taken on the mics, it feels like I'm just exhausted from this. It's not a fight, but it's this negotiation that happens. Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing, Victor. Rita?
Well, the things that I wrote down, it's a journey of humility. And just the other day, someone pointed out to me another way that we required people of color to dance the dance in order to make us feel comfortable. We had buildings that were used for training religious women. It belonged to the community, and it was a place where people came to make their vows and they got trained and blah, blah. Well, we don't have people like that coming anymore. So we had this empty building. So for a while we were saying, what should we do with this empty building? And we felt guilty that we had this real estate and it wasn't being used. So we started negotiations with a nonprofit that housed women and children who were on their way to permanent housing, but they needed a space. And well, we did everything the white way. We had conversations in the community. We had people who had volunteers for their churches. They said, yes, do it, everybody. Oh, and we became the heroes. And then just last Sunday, one of the sisters said, we never took account of what it would feel like for those women who had been humiliated or shamed or whatever in their association with nuns, coming to live in an institution, that had been a novitiate. And I thought to myself, once again, well, that's just an example of the humility we need.
Thank you, Rita. It's an ongoing process of learning and being willing to put ourselves out there and try to do less and less harm.
We were meeting our needs.
Good reflections. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone. Unfortunately, we don't have more time right now for additional shares because we want to wrap up in the next couple of minutes to be respectful of everyone's time. It's hard to bring to a close, though, after such poignant stories and quotations, and also the responses that people shared. And I know that there's more very rich responses from people. And so I just want to suggest that if you feel like it would help to share with someone, that you might connect with someone else today so that you have a space to share some feelings that came up for you. And I'm going to share my screen one last time because one of my favorite things is assigning homework. And I hope that maybe you'll do it. There's 3 things to do for homework before we meet again tomorrow. The first thing is writing a journal, reflecting on what your ideal vision is for the future of land. I wrote your land in there because I know we have many participants who are landowners and who are looking to make contributions to the land justice movement. So I'm curious what your ideal vision is for that. The second one, we did a little bit of already, but I always want to invite people to reflect more on things that we covered in a session. And if there's anything that was especially inspiring that you want to write about or make note of, or something that you found challenging, because we're working on identifying our challenges so that we can understand them and we can move through them. And finally, there's an extra handout that you received in the email that went out yesterday that is a 2-sheet handout that is called Tool, Recognizing Microaggressions and the Messages They Send. There's a lot of information on that, a lot of really important information. And because of the amount of information on it, it would be really helpful to review that before we enter our session tomorrow. Now, I'm going to leave this page up just for another minute in case people want to write this down before we have our closing.
Jason, you mentioned the piece around microaggressions that Abby will be leading tomorrow. Do you also want to name a couple of the other sessions we have planned so that folks can look forward to it?
Well, I would say that tomorrow in particular, we're focusing on microaggressions and common assumptions and misconceptions that can be hurtful when working with Black and Indigenous folks. And we're also going to dive into some very practical tools and approaches to stepping forward and being ready to start having conversations with people about land that might be a give back or might be a discount or anything like that. So we have a lot planned for tomorrow.
And I'm seeing a clarification around the page of the workbook. Is it page 6?
Let me double check. I
don't have it in front of me, but I'm just
I
seeing
do.
the chat from Peggy.
Yes, thank you for pointing out that error. It is definitely page 6.
Peggy McHale. If we were in person, you would get a, I don't know, cookie.
Thank you. Changing it now.
Well, I just want to close a little bit from our end at the Land Justice team with Nuns and Nuns with just so much gratitude to all 3 of you for just a really incredible start today. And we just really look forward to the session tomorrow and our ongoing collaboration. Thank you so much for all that you shared and all of the work and relationships and the wisdom of the folks in your relational orbit that have come to benefit us all today. May it be in service of so many more beyond this circle.
Thank you so much for having us. It's beautiful to be learning with you all, and we'll be back for another 2 hours tomorrow.
Take care, everyone. Thank you for such a beautiful and profound day, for all of your shares and this time we've spent together. Looking forward to seeing you tomorrow.
Many thanks to all of you for
Many,
putting
many
this
thanks.
together. Thank you.
See you tomorrow.
As we close out the room, if you feel like saying goodbye, unmuting and saying goodbye, please feel welcome to. Someone is
Bye.
called.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
Gratitude. Thank you.
Jesse, I see you with our youngest participant.
He's learning from his earliest days. Yeah.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you all.
Thank you
See
very
you
much.
tomorrow.
Here.
See you tomorrow. Thank you.
Thanks for being here.